I smiled in every single wedding photo, even though my heart was breaking with every click of the camera. Looking back now, I don't think the most painful part was realizing my family had abandoned me. The most painful part was realizing they had planned it all along. If you're wondering how someone could do that to their own daughter, trust me. I asked myself the same question for months. My name is Emma, and my entire life I lived in my younger sister Olivia's shadow. She was the golden child. Every birthday party was bigger. Every achievement was celebrated louder. And every mistake she made was somehow forgiven, before anyone even mentioned it. I grew up believing that if I worked harder, loved my family more, and stayed patient, one day they'd love me the same way they loved her. Then I met Daniel. He loved me without conditions, proposed after 3 amazing years together, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally building the family I'd always dreamed of. Something strange happened after we announced our wedding. My parents suddenly became supportive. My mom called almost every day asking about flowers and decorations. My dad proudly told everyone he couldn't wait to walk me down the aisle. Even Olivia offered to help me plan everything. It honestly felt too good to be true. But I ignored the tiny voice in my head telling me not to trust it. The night before the wedding, my mother hugged me tighter than she had in years and whispered, "Tomorrow is your day, sweetheart. Nothing matters more than family." I believed every word. The next morning, I slipped into my wedding dress, looked at myself in the mirror, and cried happy tears because I thought my life was finally changing. But 30 minutes before the ceremony, my wedding planner quietly walked over and asked if we should delay the start because nearly half of the reserved seats on my family's side were still empty. I laughed and said they were probably running late. 5 minutes passed. Then 10, then 20. I kept checking my phone. No missed calls, no texts, no apologies, just silence. Then my phone buzzed with a Facebook notification. I smiled, thinking maybe it was someone wishing me luck. Instead, I opened a photo that made my entire body go numb. My parents, my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, almost everyone who was supposed to be sitting at my wedding. We're standing together on a beach in Hawaii, smiling beside my sister as she showed off a diamond engagement ring. The caption read, "She said yes. Best surprise engagement ever." At that exact moment, standing in my wedding dress, I realized my family hadn't simply forgotten my wedding. They had chosen hers instead. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. I kept staring at that photo, hoping it was old, hoping Facebook had made some mistake. But then another picture appeared. And another. My mother was laughing with a flower lei around her neck. My father had his arm around my sister's fiancé. My grandparents were holding champagne glasses. Every single person who had promised to be there for me was celebrating someone else instead. My hand started shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. Daniel noticed something was wrong and quietly pulled me aside. I couldn't even speak. I simply handed him my phone. I'll never forget the look on his face as he scrolled through the photos. His jaw tightened. But instead of asking if I wanted to cancel the wedding, he wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "Look at me. Don't let them steal today from us too." Those words were the only reason. I didn't fall apart. I wiped my tears, fixed my makeup, and walked down the aisle with my grandfather's oldest friend, a man who had watched me grow up and volunteered to take my father's place without hesitation. Every step felt heavier than the last because I couldn't stop looking at the empty seats where my family should have been sitting. The photographer kept asking everyone to smile, and somehow I did. Every photo from that day shows a smiling bride, but no one can see what was happening inside me. During the reception, relatives who had actually attended kept asking where my parents were. I lied over and over again, saying there had been a family emergency because I was too embarrassed to admit the truth. Then halfway through dinner, my phone rang. It was my mother. I rushed outside thinking she was finally going to apologize. Instead, the first thing she said was, "Please don't make this about you." Olivia's engagement was a once-in-a-lifetime surprise, and everyone had already booked their flights before we realized it was your wedding weekend. Stood there in complete disbelief. My own mother had just told me not to make my wedding day about me. Before I could answer, she added something that hurt even more. "You're already married now. You can always celebrate again later. But your sister only gets engaged once." That sentence changed something inside me forever. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to convince myself that I was imagining the favoritism. I finally accepted the truth. I had never been their priority, and I never would be. The morning after our wedding, I made one decision that completely changed my life. I stopped calling. I stopped texting. I stopped begging my family to explain why I had never been enough. For the first time, I chose my own peace over their approval. A week later, my parents finally came home from Hawaii. My mother kept leaving voicemails, saying I was overreacting, and that families shouldn't hold grudges over one misunderstanding. My father sent a short message, saying he hoped we could all move on because what's done is done. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them admitted they had chosen my sister's surprise engagement over my wedding. They expected me to pretend nothing had happened, just like I always had. But this time was different. I never replied. Months passed, and life became surprisingly peaceful. Daniel and I focused on building our own family, surrounded by people who actually wanted to be part of our lives. Then, almost a year later, my sister called me out of nowhere. She wasn't calling to apologize. She wanted a favor. Her fiancé had left her after discovering she had lied to him about several things, and suddenly she needed family again. When I quietly reminded her that she already had the family she chose over me on my wedding day, she started crying and said, "Can't you just let it go?" I took a deep breath and answered with the calmest voice I'd ever used. "I did let it go. I just let all of you go with it." Then I hung up. A few months later, my parents showed up at my front door asking to meet their first grandchild. After Daniel and I welcomed our baby girl, they stood there holding gifts, acting as if nothing had ever happened. I looked at my daughter sleeping peacefully in my arms and realized something. She would never grow up wondering if she was loved enough. She would never compete with another child for her parents' attention. I thanked them for coming, wished them well, and quietly closed the door. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting off my family. The truth is, I don't miss the people who skipped my wedding. I miss the family I spent my whole life hoping they would become. And once I accepted that those people never really existed, I finally found the peace I'd been searching for all along. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.